Hey students, welcome back to BBA Simplified by Dr. Vinky Sharma. Continuing with our marathon class on Managerial Economics. In today's class, we start with Unit 2, that is Demand and Supply Analysis. One of the most scoring chapters in Managerial Economics and one of my personal favorite. This chapter helps us understand how consumers behave, how prices influence buying decisions, and how businesses forecast future demand. So let's begin. Let's first understand what is the meaning of demand. Demand refers to the quantity of a product that consumers are willing and able to buy at a given price during a specific period. So here we have seen first the quantity of the commodity. Next thing that is important is willingness and ability to buy at a given price and during a given period of time. So here we see that there are three key elements. First is the desire to buy. Next is the ability to pay, and the third one is willingness to pay. I am able to pay for the product, but am I willing to pay for the product or not? For example, if I want to buy an iPhone but cannot afford it, then it is nothing but only a desire, and this desire cannot be a demand. I hope the meaning of demand is clear here. Now let's understand the difference between demand and quantity demanded. So when we talk about demand, we say that demand means the entire relationship between the price and quantity demanded. Whereas quantity demanded means a specific amount consumers buy at a specific price. So here in case of demand, we see that there is a relationship between price and the quantity. It shifts in the entire curve. We will be talking about the demand curve and supply curve in the coming slides. So this brings in the shift in the entire curve, and there is a change in the demand due to income, due to taste, due to population, and there are other factors as well. Whereas when we try and understand the quantity demanded, we say that it is a specific quantity purchased at a given price. So there is a movement along the curve. It does not shift it entirely. And why it happens? It happens due to price change only. This quantity demanded is changing only and only due to the change in price. For example, there is an ice cream, and it is my favorite ice cream. I see that there is a fall of price from rupees 100 to rupees 80, and the quantity increases from 50 units to 80 units, right? So that is a change in quantity demanded. There is a movement along the demand curve. But if the income increases and people start buying more ice creams, even if it is selling at the same price, that is only a change in demand. So there is a shift for the entire curve. Let's now move on to understanding demand theory and its related objectives. This demand theory will help us understand the concept of demand even better. We say that demand theory studies how consumers make buying decisions. How do they decide that what is to be bought? Then it further helps us to answer the questions like what will consumers buy, how much will they buy, and how much price affects their choices. So how the price is influencing the purchasing decision, what is the relationship between price and quantity demanded, and the consumer choice behavior. Therefore, we say that this theory is the base for business decision making, such as pricing, forecasting, production, and marketing as well. We also see there are different objectives of demand analysis. There is a need that the management does the analysis of the demand because it further helps in First, determining the pricing strategy. It helps the managers, it helps the management to decide the right price. Further, to estimate the future sales on the given price. It helps in planning the production level, how much is to be produced. Again, further depends on the demand of the product. It also helps us to set the inventory levels, how much inventory is to be maintained at all the time. It prepares the marketing strategy, right? What marketing strategy is to be used in order to meet up all the demands. And it further helps in planning the expansions and investments, which is to be done by the organization, right? For example, before launching a new cold drink, Coca-Cola would do what? It would first study the demand, it would study the market size, the taste preferences and the competing brands, and then only Coca-Cola would actually come on to actually launching a new cold drink. Similarly, maybe a company first studies the demand before launching any new phone model. Now let's look at the demand schedule and demand curve. This demand curve will make the concept even more clear. What is demand schedule? We say that a demand schedule is actually a table that helps us to see the quantities demanded at different prices. It helps us to understand that how, when the prices are increases, what is the effect on the quantity demanded of the product. For example, here I have made a table to depict this difference. At rupees 10, the demand is 100 units, but as the price goes down to rupees 8, the quantity demanded also increases to 150. As it goes down to 6, the quantity demanded increases to 200. As it goes further down to 4, the quantity demanded even increases up till level 300. So what does it show? It shows that the inverse relationship between price and the quantity demanded. We see that as there is a decrease in the price, there is always an increase in quantity demanded. We'll understand this with the help of a demand curve now. What is demand curve? It is nothing but a graphical representation of the demand schedule, what we have just understood. So it slopes downward from left to right, which means that as the price increases, the quantity demanded decreases, or inversely, as the price decreases, the quantity demanded increases. So we see that there is an inverse relationship here between price and demand. Now, what are the reasons for this downward slope? Because here we are talking about the first thing, which is diminishing marginal utility, which means that with each extra unit we purchase, the level of satisfaction decreases. So there is a diminishing marginal utility for any of the product. Then there is a downward slope because of the income effect, right? The lower the prices, increase in the purchasing power. If the income is increasing, the purchasing power will also increase. And if further the prices are decreasing, then of course the demand or the purchasing power would increase. Then there are substitution effect, which says that consumers switch to cheaper substitute as and when the prices increases. Or inversely, let's say the income increases, then consumers substitute the product to the expensive products because now their buying capacity has increased. For example, coffee prices rise. So what will happen? People would shift to tea. So that is nothing but a substitution effect. So these are the reasons for a downward slope. Generally, a question comes in the examination that define or state the reasons that why there is a downward slope in the demand curve. So please ensure that you make a graph and you explain these reasons. Now let's understand the law of demand. Law of demand states that when other things being constant, quantity demanded increases every time when price decreases and vice versa. When the price increases, the quantity demand decreases. So when we talk about these other things being constant, these other things are nothing but the assumptions here, which says that this statement holds true when there is no change in the income, no change in the taste, no change in the population, and no substitutes price change are happening at a given period of time. So when other things remain constant, this quantity demanded increases whenever price decrease and vice versa happen. And this applies to most of the normal goods. But there are some exceptions to this law of demand. What are those exceptions? We say that the law of demand does not work with these goods. The first one is the giffen good. Giffen goods are nothing but they are extremely poor households that they buy these products. As the price rises, they will still buy them more. So these giffen goods are the low quality or very less expensive products. Then there are Veblen goods. These Veblen goods has something to do with the status of an individual in the society. So what all goods comes under this category? We talk about luxury items like diamonds. So in this case, what happens that the demand increases when the price increases due to the prestige, right? Next is the necessities. Of course, even if the prices are increasing, the demand will still remain high because these are the necessities. For example, medicines, you are bound to buy them. Salt, something very, very essential to prepare your food. So these are the necessities. So price does not have any effect on the demand of these type of goods. Next is the future expectations. So when people expect that prices will rise soon, then even if the price of a product is already high, due to these future expectations, the demand also further increases. Next could be ignorance. People would not know that whether there was an increase in price or not. And the last goods are addiction. For any of the good that you are addicted to, even if price increases, the demand still remains on a higher side. For example, alcohol, for example, cigarettes, right? So these are the exceptions to law of demand. These kind of goods do not hold any law of demand with it. Even if the price increases, the demand would still remain the same or may on the higher side. For example, gold price. When we see that gold price is rising every day, but people still buy it for weddings because there are emotional connects and there are cultural reasons to buy the gold and gift gold in the weddings. So again, gold also comes under the exception of law. Now we'll try and understand the elasticity of demand. This is again the same thing that we had talked in the first unit as well. So we'll now understand that what exactly elasticity of demand means. Elasticity measures how much demand changes when there is a change in price, there is a change in income or price of the related goods. So this elasticity measures that how much quantity demanded changes in response to change in price, income or related goods price. So we call it as price elasticity of demand or income elasticity of demand or substitute goods elasticity of demand. It can be defined in this ways also. Elasticity of demand helps us in in managing and understanding that how sensitive the consumers are. So with the help of this elasticity of demand, the managers are able to understand the consumer behavior better. As the price changes, what is the change in the consumer's behavior or what is the change in the consumption of a product? We'll further understand that what are the different types of elasticities. As I mentioned that there is one price elasticity of demand. It happens due to the change in the price. So we see that there is a change in demand due to change in price. Income elasticity can be explained as change in demand due to change in income of an individual. Cross elasticity of demand is another type of elasticity. It depicts change in demand due to the change in price of related goods. So because we are talking about the substitute or related goods, that is why it is cross elasticity. And the last one is advertising or promotional elasticity. It depicts change in the demand due to promotional expenses. As we see that there is one product which is advertised frequently, so our focus or our intention goes on buying to that product which is more promoted by the company. Let's understand the different degrees of price elasticity. This price elasticity actually expresses the responsiveness of the consumer. How or what is the response of the consumer as and when there is a change in the price or income or choices. So let's understand that there is one degree which is called as perfectly elastic. This depicts that even if there is a slightest price increase, the demand would simply go zero. Even with the slightest price increase, the demand will come zero. We depict it with the sign or symbol of an infinity. The next is highly elastic. It depicts that consumers are very, very sensitive to the price. Highly elasticity means wherein the consumers are very much sensitive to the price. Here we are talking about the products of, those products which are highly elastic, wherein consumers are affected due to increase in the price. Then we say unitary elastic. This is showing the proportionate change, or the behavior of the consumer remains proportionate, right? So there is not much sensitivity depicted here. Next is less elastic, wherein there is a small change in demand, very less change in demand happens due to the increase in price. And finally, we see perfectly inelastic, wherein demand never changes even if there is a change in price of the product. For example, giffen goods, for example, necessity goods, right? So these are the different degrees of price elasticity. Now let us talk about how elasticity of demand is measured. Understanding measurement is very important. Why? Because businesses use these tools to decide prices. They are able to predict the revenue and they further plan their marketing strategies. We see that there are 4 methods for measuring the elasticity. Let's understand the very first method. This method measures the elasticity by calculating the percentage change in the quantity demanded. So we see that whenever there is a percentage change in the quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. In fact, this is the formula to calculate the percentage here, right? It is also known as a mathematical method, right? So here we see that elasticity is calculated when we divide the change in percentage of quantity demanded with the percentage change in the price of any product. So let's say that if a price of a product decreases by 10% and the demand increases by 20%. So the elasticity would be 20 divided by 10 comes out to be 2, which means that demand is highly elastic, because in the previous slide we saw that anything which is over and above 1, we say it is highly elastic. This method gives a very clear numerical value and it is one of the most widely used in the theoretical analysis. The next method is a total expenditure method. This method was developed by Alfred Marshall. Here we observe that how total spending by the consumer changes when there is a change in price. So we see two things here. First is the total spending by the consumer that is affected by the change in the price of a product, right? Now here we see that there are three possibilities. First one is, let's say when the price falls. In this case, the total expenditure also no, let's take the first case wherein we say that the price of the product falls and the total expenditure increases, right? In this case, the demand will remain elastic, right? The second case will be if the price falls and the total expenditure also decreases. So in this case, the demand will be inelastic. And the third scenario is when the price decreases but the total expenditure remains still the same. We say that the demand is unitary elastic, right? So this is the second method. For example, we see that there is a price drop from rupees 10 to rupees 8. The total expenditure rises from rupees 1000 to 1200. So we say that here the demand is elastic. This method is very useful for businesses because they directly look at the revenue impact. Coming on to the third method, we also call it as geometric method. Here what we are doing is that we are looking at the price change, right, at a particular point of time. We say that this method is helpful when a price change are very small and demand curve is continuous. There are key points here. First is that on the upper portion of a straight line. So if I draw a curve and I show you that there is a straight line curve, so anything that is coming above the curve, any point that is coming above the curve, it is elastic, and if it is in the middle, then we say that it is equals to 1, and if it is below anywhere here, then we say that it is less than 1. For example, if a company wants to know elasticity at a current market price, this here the point method gives the precise measurement. The last method is the arc elasticity method. This method is used when there is a larger or substantial change in price. So instead of measuring the elasticity between the two single points, arc elasticity calculates the average elasticity over a range of prices. Now why this is important? Because here the price do not always move slightly. We see sometimes that a company makes a major price revision. So here the arc elasticity provides a more accurate measurement in such cases. For example, we see that there is a price change from rupees 100 to rupees 70 and the quantity demanded rises from 50 to 120 units. So here arc elasticity gives a more balanced result as compared to the point method. So we see that whenever there are small changes, point method is used, and when there are major changes, arc elasticity method is used. Alright, now let's come on to the second part of this unit, that is supply. So let's understand what is supply analysis, or what is the meaning of supply. Supply is the quantity of goods producers are willing and able to sell at various prices. So higher price usually encourages suppliers to produce more. Here you also need to understand the difference between the stock and the supply. Stock is something that remains with the producer all the time, that they have to maintain in order to meet up the demand. But supply is when actually this stock is in the transit and it goes to the vendor, right? So coming back again on the definition of supply, we see here that supply is the quantity of a product that sellers are willing and able. Here also, as similar to demand, we see the willingness and the ability, but here of a producer rather than in case of a demand we used to see it for the consumer. So here we are talking about the willingness and ability of a seller to offer for sale at a given price and at a given time. Higher price usually encourages suppliers to produce more. Coming on to law of supply, we say that with other things remain constant, when the quantity supplied increases, when price increases, makes the law of supply. This is because higher prices is equals to higher profit. So demand curve is always downward, and we see that a supply curve is the upward curve. We see that if the price increases, the supply also increases, though the demand decreases. And if the price decreases, the supply also decreases in order to maintain the price of the product, though the demand increases. So again, there is an inverse relationship between the demand and supply. Now let's look at the different determinants that affect the supply of a product. We say that supply depends on the price of the product. Price increases, supply increases. The cost of production, the technology that we are using, number of sellers, government policies, and the future expectations related to the price. For example, if cost of a raw material rises, in that case the supply decreases. Now, why here the supply decreases? Because this is something related to the producers. So if the cost of raw material will increase, then from the suppliers side the demand would decrease, and when the demand would decrease, the supply will also decrease. Having understood something about supply, now let's come on to demand forecasting. How do we forecast the demand? We say that demand forecasting is a process wherein estimation of future demands are done using the past data, trends, and the market analysis. Why are we doing it? Because it helps companies prepare for the future demands. So it is also used for budgeting, for production, finance, and expansion decisions. Here we are doing nothing but we are forecasting the demand for the future of a particular product. Then we need to see that why there is a need for demand forecasting. Why do we only do it? Why? Because without forecasting, the businesses would not be able to plan the production. They will not be able to decide the inventory levels that they have to maintain. They will not be able to set the budgets, to schedule the staff that is required for the production, to plan their marketing strategies, and further to avoid the shortages or overproductions. So that is why the businesses do the demand forecasting. When we talk about Amazon and the Maha sale that comes over Amazon, what does Amazon do there? It predicts the festivities and the sale months in advance so that it can manage its stock and its inventory, and wherein it is able to deliver the products on time and before the festivals. So that is why this demand forecasting is very, very important. Now, to forecast the demand, there are various methods. The first method is a qualitative method and the other one is the quantitative method. Under qualitative method, we have expert opinion method. Expert opinion method is wherein we ask the experts, basis their experience, they give their opinion and they determine the demand for the future period. In case of Delphi method, this is a method that we had also discussed in other subjects. Here also it comes up. Delphi method is a technique wherein the opinion of the experts is taken but anonymously. And these opinions are taken till all the experts come on to the consensus. But the opinions still remain the anonymous. Next is the market survey. We can simply go in the market, we can do the survey, we can ask the consumers, and basis the survey we can determine the demand for the future. The last method is a sales force opinion. Here we take the opinion from our sales team. We ask them why, because they are the one who are directly dealing with the consumers. So the sales team gives their opinion that what is going to be the demand for the future. Talking about quantitative methods, we have trend projection, moving average method, exponential smoothing method, and regression analysis, wherein we put in the certain formulas, and on the basis of the data collected, and we put them into the formulas, and those formulas gives us the exact numbers. So that is why we call it as quantitative method. They are more mathematical in nature. For example, there is a telecom company that uses trend analysis to predict new SIM card demand. So these method use different formulas wherein we get the numbers, and basis those numbers we project the demand. Let's come on to the last part of the unit, wherein we'll summarize whatever we have learned in today's session, and then we will look at the examination questions. So in today's session, we have learned that demand means willingness and ability to buy, whereas supply means willingness and ability to sell the product. Further, we saw that the law of demand explains the inverse price and demand relationship. As the price increases, demand decreases. We saw that what is the demand elasticity, how it is measured, and how it is responsive to the sensitivity of the consumer buying behavior. We had also learned that supply shows the seller behavior, whether seller has the willingness and ability to sell the product. And then finally we have learned about forecasting, which further helps the producers in planning, in setting the prices, and in deciding their production capacity. These are various questions that have been coming in the previous year examinations. For example, define demand, explain the law of demand. What is elasticity? Explain types of elasticity. What is demand curve? What factors shift it? Explain demand forecasting and its methods. Write a note on demand schedule with examples. Explain supply analysis and discuss objectives of demand analysis. Thank you so much for learning with BBA Simplified by Dr. Vinky Sharma. In the next unit, we will be covering market analysis. Do like, share and subscribe for more marathon classes. Thank you so much for watching.